Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics, and we're continuing the Brexit, and more Brexit today. In this video, what I'd like to discuss is there's been a leaked presentation from the Cabinet Office given to government ministers on the realistic worst-case scenario of winter flu, COVID, and a no-deal Brexit hitting this winter. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So granted, on this particular occasion, Brexit is just part of the picture. But when we look at that term, reasonable worst case scenario, where have we heard that before? Oh yes, that's right. Last year, Project Yellowhammer, which was a government document, initially kept secret, warning of the likely consequences of a no-deal Brexit. It was not pretty, and involved the use of the word rioting within a couple of weeks of a no-deal Brexit. Now, that Operation Yellowhammer was for an actual full-scale no-deal Brexit. That meant no withdrawal agreement, just cliff edge, gone, nothing in place at all. What we have when we talk about a no-deal Brexit at the end of this year as a possibility there, we will still have the withdrawal agreement. That is signed into law. British law, international law, EU law. It doesn't provide much, but it is still, you would think, potentially less severe than if there had been no withdrawal agreement whatsoever. Obviously, we still have to stick to our commitments in that withdrawal agreement. Therein lies the rub. But that being said, I could also argue that the original Operation Yellowhammer wasn't considering the combination of Brexit and a deadly plague either. But anyway, either way, Boris Johnson's government seemed to have decided that maybe some planning will be needed. That's good. Excellent. So a presentation has been used to brief ministers, and it seems to have been leaked to The Sun. Now, The Sun is basically, I've described it in the past as a comic for grown-ups who have a level of maturity that children would find distasteful. It is also staunchly pro-Brexit and pro-Boris Johnson. Not that their article seems to gloss over much of the terrible impact of this potential triple whammy. And when I say potential, I don't mean there's an outside chance of all this happening. Consider this. COVID cases are on the rise right now. So a massive problem in winter is definitely on the cards. In fact, you'd imagine it'd be difficult to avoid it at this point. We're about to reopen schools en masse without any measures in place, such as routine checks for teachers. The Chief Medical Officer made clear this weekend that this means the transmission rate is going to go up. It's already believed to be over 1. So, very likely. Winter flu will certainly happen. It's very much an annual event. I suppose it might bite a little bit less this year due to Boris Johnson's efforts in wiping from existence many of the people most vulnerable to it. But the combination of flu and COVID this winter is going to make it a lot harder for the government to paper over the cracks in our health and social care provision. And then there's the no-deal Brexit. I mean, you've got to bear in mind, even if we agree a deal, it's little better than a no-deal Brexit. It still means friction. Don't imagine if we agree a deal now that it means that the borders will be fine and traffic will flow. It won't. Don't imagine that, because the customs declarations still have to be filled out, checks still have to be done, maybe not as many checks, depends on the nature of the agreement, but checks are still going to have to take place. So we're going to have that trade friction come what may that we haven't experienced for years. It just depends. No deal means really horrendous. Deal means maybe not as bad. Now, the combination of all three of those is not just possible, but likely. 2 of them are basically certain. The other one, almost certain. So the leaked presentation, according to The Sun, who seem to be the only media outlet to have been given the document, which I find curious, and they've not provided the full thing for our own personal perusal. All I can see is the article based on it. Suggests that hospitals could be overwhelmed and that we could experience shortages of power and petrol with 8,500 lorries being stuck at Dover. It also warns that the Royal Navy may need to involve itself in maritime clashes between different fishermen at the end of the transition period. Further, it claims that 5% of town halls could go bust. That, of course, will mean chaos in social care. That's what it says. It still predicts public disorder, including rioting. It also warns of shortages and price increases. Now, troops on the street is another one. It goes on. It says that 1,500 are already on standby. Now, I know members of the armed forces were not permitted leave last April when Theresa May feared that Parliament might force through a no-deal Brexit at the end of March. So that's always been on the cards, that we may end up with troops on the street. It also made mention of the fact that social distancing and masks would be required into 2021 no matter what happens. There is no outcome that means that won't be the case. And this is hardly surprising because, you know, the chief medical officer, you know, said some time ago that he doesn't expect the COVID situation to improve until next spring at least, which is hardly surprising because we in this country refuse to pursue a zero COVID strategy, you know, the one recommended by public health experts. And you know, it also talks about now, you know, supplies of food and fuel being under threat for Christmas if Dover is blocked. That'll be that no-deal Brexit rearing its head again. Interesting. When this article in The Sun talked about the trade barriers being thrown up on January the 1st, 2021, as a result of the no-deal Brexit, it actually said this. You could tell it's a pro-Brexit paper just from this line. In that scenario, planners believe France will force mandatory controls on UK goods from day one. That is the pro-Brexit narrative, isn't it? It's not France forcing in. It's the World Trade Organization rules. They'll be enforcing World Trade Organization rules because, do you know what? In the event of a no-deal Brexit, that's what we're trading. It's not just the UK trading with the EU on World Trade Organization terms. The EU have to trade with the UK on World Trade Organization terms. Goes both ways, you see. France will just be complying with WTO rules. But the Sun can't say that because for Brexiteers, trading on WTO rules is supposed to be marvellous. Wonderful. Cracking. So, of course, the realities of Brexit will actually just be France being a pain in the arse. Now, one thing that was really interesting is this presentation apparently said that the flow between Dover and Calais would slow down by 45% for 3 months. Now, so I was thinking, well, okay, you know, because the Operation Yellowhammer talked about an actual no-deal Brexit, no withdrawal agreement even. Would this one be substantially better? It seems not. Seems not, because it's the same period of time noted in Operation Yellowhammer as well as the extent of damage. In Operation Yellowhammer, it talked about flow being reduced by 40 to 60%, or 45% is in that, for 3 months, same period of time. And then it said after 3 months, it'll be cut down by between 30 and 50%. 30 and 50%. This article didn't seem to say what's going to happen after the 3 months. I don't imagine it's going to suggest that it'll magically go away completely and we're back to normal. So it looks to me like very similar to Operation Yellowhammer type worries. Then the money shot. This is where it comes in, because here's the thing. Backlog of trucks at Dover, problem for people in Kent. Rest of the country, you'll see it on the news. Massive hit to the economy. Well, I mean, the economy's been bad for a while and the Conservatives keep telling people it's buoyant. You know, people don't see the economy, they don't really pay attention to it. This report. This could lead to shortages of 30% of our food imported from the EU, as well as medicines, chemicals for water purification, and fuel supply. This is what everyone will notice. Like I've said before, economic impacts of Brexit don't really register in the public. But shortages of food, medicines, fuel, and safe drinking water, that's another matter. People will notice that. All sorts of people. Not just the poorest. It hits them worse. But not just them. And the presentation also reported that rationing and power cuts could be used to manage the situation. Whew. Rationing. That's a plan, is it? Apparently that's a plan. I mean, presumably that will be their last resort plan, but the fact that they'd even consider it, obviously Europhiles such as myself will be pointing out very, very loudly when asking Brexit supporters, who will probably dwindle in number at this point, why exactly did we leave the most powerful economic and political force in the world? We can't even look after ourselves. We are the global equivalent of an 11-year-old running away from home and then realising they're hungry at tea time. But what about the Brexit media? That right-wing media? Look at the fuss they made about not being allowed to get their nails painted during lockdown or having to wear a bit of cloth over their face for a few minutes to do their shopping. Can you imagine what these special snowflakes are going to have to say about being issued with a ration book? I mean, they're always trying to evoke the spirit of the Second World War. Well, then they'll be able to put their money where their mouth is. Rationing. Oh, come on. That has surely got to be the nail in Boris Johnson's political coffin, if he's even around at that point. Oh, and they also mentioned something about flooding as well, because, you know, we could well get flooding in winter like we did this winter. I mean, sure, why not? We'll be beset by biblical plagues made worse by the incompetence and complete lack of compassion from this brainless Brexit government. We'll have been the first country in history to impose severe economic sanctions on ourselves. I mean, severe. Why not add flooding as well? In fact, while we're at it, why not let it rain frogs and have millions of locusts descending on us as well? Why not? Why not? I'll link the article for you to read it yourself for all the gory details. But that is some of the juiciest things to worry about. What I really wanted to look for was the planning. The planning cannot surely just be rationing and rolling blackouts. I mean, I wasn't getting my hopes up. Our planning for Brexit talks, care homes, track and trace, the furlough scheme and exam grades has, to put it mildly, fallen flat. But I was interested nonetheless. All I could really find was some piss poor amount of money being promised. I mean, an injection of cash is not a plan. And the amount is pathetic as well. £3 billion for the NHS, £600 million for social care. This is going to be one of those Boris Johnson moments in PMQs, isn't it? Keir Starmer's going to ask him what he's going to do. Boris Johnson's going to answer, £3 billion for the NHS, £6 million for social care. You may applause me when you are ready. This is ridiculous. So let's take that £3 billion for the NHS. Sounds a lot, doesn't it? Yeah, to a person it sounds a lot. They always do this. They talk about a sum of money and you go, oh, that's a lot. Wow, that's big spending. Is it? Is it really? You know, he's asked what he's going to do about an impending disaster about to unfold, and he will quote a figure that sounds impressive. Sounds impressive, £3 billion. But it's actually little more than a sticking plaster over a severed artery. So take that £3 billion for the NHS. Sounds a lot. Okay. What if instead of saying £3 billion for the NHS, he said he was going to increase NHS spending by 2%? Does that sound impressive? Does that sound like it's going to do the job? Doesn't sound like it's going to do the job, but that's what he's talking about. Then put it in another context. So £3 billion, let's look at the figure. So £3 billion, okay. Over winter, that's when we've got COVID that will be as bad, if not worse, as our first dose of it, plus winter flu. £3 billion. Bear in mind that £15 billion of our taxpayers' money has already been spent by the government on PPE for that first dose of COVID. Now, not that we got £15 billion worth of PPE because, you know, they gave it to dodgy companies who didn't provide what they should have done. But nonetheless, we have spent £15 billion. So we are going to try and now say that a third of that's just what we spent on PPE. That's not everything. That's just PPE. A third of that amount is going to cover everything over winter when we're going to have COVID again and the winter flu. That's going to cover it, is it? I mean, I could go on. But no point. I'd hope to see at some point the actual presentation leaked properly so that I can see it. I can download it myself and have a proper go through it. But frankly, I'm not even sure the article pulled any punches. It's devastating. It seems to me every bit as devastating as Operation Yellowhammer. It's just that being the Sun, they haven't really reported too many of the details. But what's in there's huge. You need to read it yourself. But there we go. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hopefully you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.